This is a FlippingJunkie Podcast, episode 35. Welcome to the FlippingJunkie Podcast. My name is Danny Johnson, former software developer turned house flipper, flipping hundreds of houses. Each week, we bring you interviews, strategies, stories, and motivation to help you get started flipping houses and on your way to becoming your own boss and achieving financial freedom. Thanks for spending time with me today. Now let's get to it. Hey, welcome back to the FlippingJunkie Podcast. Thanks for tuning in for this week's episode. I've got a good friend from Houston, Jason Bible. He's going to be talking to us about finding private lenders for your house flips and real estate investments. Basically, we're going to cover what exactly is a private lender, how they differ from hard money lenders, and then describe what makes a good private lender a good lender based on terms, requirements that they have, how fast they can close, and how deep their pockets are. So we're going to talk about some of those numbers and basically what we look for when we're looking for private lenders to use for our house flips. Now, we're also, of course, going to get into how to find these great private lenders to use for your house flips to save you money on interest and your money cost. Sometimes people will have a flip that they're working for a long time and spend over a year on it. And, once they go to sell it and they pay off their loan on it, they're kind of surprised about how much, that money costs. You've got to be careful about that. Know what your costs are. Have good estimates for your days on market so that you don't end up losing a lot of your profit to pay for the money that you use to do the flip. So we'll be talking with Jason about that. He got his first taste in real estate investing after joining a local real estate club. He's been only really flipping for not very long. I think it's 4 years or so, but he's done an incredible amount of growing of his business in Houston in that amount of time. I'm really impressed by the systems he's built, the business that he's built over there in Houston. I had the pleasure of flying my plane over there to Houston a couple weeks ago to be on his radio show. He's just started a radio show in Houston. We'll talk about that with him when we get him on the show here in a minute. And you can tune into him online to hear his show that he's doing 5 days a week, I think it is. But thanks again for listening to the FlippingJunkie Podcast. I really appreciate it. And you can find the show notes page for this episode at flippingjunkie.com/35. We'll have notes on all the things we talked about, any links that we talk about for other resources online here. And I'll have a guide that you can download on that show notes page for finding and working with private lenders. So that's flippingjunkie.com/35, and you'll be able to get that guide there that you can download a PDF for free. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll get started. All right, hey Jason, you there?
I'm here.
Great, thanks again for being on the show. I was telling everybody in the intro that I was on your radio show over there in Houston. Do you want to talk a little bit about that real quick, just let people know about it?
Yeah, we had talked about doing a radio show on business radio, one of the AM stations here in Houston. If you know anything about Houston radio, Houston's a pretty major market, and just an opportunity opened up for us. We have a buddy that does radio, so I called a couple of sponsors, and they said they sponsor the show, so it works great. It's a good marketing campaign for us. It's on 1110 KTEK Business Radio. So it's on at 9 a.m. It's called Right Path Real Estate. If you're looking for us you can find us on Facebook. Our website's rightpathradio.com. To be quite honest with you, it's kind of an ugly website right now. We haven't updated it yet. But they can find us there. And we do the radio show every day, 9 a.m. on 1110 a.m. KTEK, KTEK.
Even sounds kind of radio-y.
I'm trying. We've been working on our radio voices. Hey everybody, welcome to the show.
Yeah, I did that on a couple episodes back. I don't think it came across very well, so I stopped trying to do that. But so you ready to talk? I know you guys do quite a bit of working with lenders and things like that. So you're the perfect person to talk about this episode on finding private lenders and working with them. So. You want to get started with the basics, like what exactly is a private lender?
Yeah, there's the way we look at it is there's really three types of financing. There's those hard money lenders out there that are really they're professional real estate investors that lend to other real estate investors. There are institutional financiers, and that's banks and hedge funds and all that sort of stuff. And then there's the private lenders. And really the private lenders are folks just like you and I that have got, a couple $100,000 sitting in a checking account earning, zero, or in the future here, less than zero. Or, they've got some money sitting in an IRA somewhere. So those are really kind of the three distinctions. The first two groups, the institutional lenders and the other investors that are hard money lenders, are really real estate. They're lending focused full time. That's their full time job. And most of these private money lenders are just guys like you and I that are guys and gals that are just looking for a decent return on their investment. I mean that's really the difference between those who are kind of professional full time lenders and those that aren't.
Yeah, and so would you say a lot of private lenders were approached by investors with the idea of lending for the deals, or do you think that they sort of sought out investors to borrow their money?
My preference is to work with private lenders that are already private lenders. I see a lot of folks that teach real estate education in such a way that they tell you, oh, you need to go to all your friends and family that might have an IRA or might have a couple $100,000 in a checking account, and essentially convince them that whatever they're doing now is wrong, and that they need to A, invest in real estate, and B, invest in your real estate deals. And I just, maybe it's just because I'm lazy or I've got other stuff to do during the day, I just figure it's a lot easier to work with lenders who are already lending. And in a lot of times they just approach us. So, in fact, I have one funny story. I was sitting here in my office one day, and it's like 8:30 in the morning, got my cup of coffee, and I hear somebody walk in to our little lobby area there where our admin sits, and he says, "My name is Alan, and I got money to lend." And I'm like, what is going on? So admin opens my door, and she goes, there's Alan. Alan's here, and he's got like $1 million he wants to lend you on. I'm like, what is going on? So I sat down, and lo and behold, he's a real estate investor here in town. He does a lot of commercial. In fact, when you were in Houston, we probably drove by one of his buildings. He came down during the RTC days, during the last big real estate crash in the 80s, bought a ton of stuff, very, very wealthy guy. And in any case, he's one of the lenders. So it's guys like that I like to do business with, the traditional, kind of the folks that are already in real estate. I don't have to explain to them what we're doing, right? I mean, I don't have a sales pitch. It's like, hey, this is what we do. Are you interested in lending to us or not? I mean, it's pretty simple. So, like I said, I'm kind of lazy in that regard. And I'll tell you, one of my favorite groups to raise money from are lenders who've gotten burned, or investors who've gotten burned. And a lot of times I don't know that when I'm first meeting with them until we're sitting down at the conference table and we start talking about how we do a deal, right? Everybody's in a first lien position. We don't pool money. I mean, it's either in a deal or it's sitting in escrow in your account. I mean, we kind of go through the whole process of what that looks like and all the legal framework. And a lot of times we'll give them our attorney, our closing, the company we always close with, and a couple other references and say, hey, go check up on us to make sure we're a legit, organization. And about halfway through the presentation, their shoulders slump and their head kind of goes like this, and you go, hey, what's the problem? Well, I just had to foreclose on Blow Joe, investor, and the deal didn't work out, and our attorney told us if we had set it up like you had told us to, then we wouldn't have as many issues. So I really like people who've gotten hurt before, because when they come to see us, they know why we do things a certain way. I'm hearing some horror stories. Now that I've been in Houston for a while, we've been doing this for almost 3 years now. I don't want to say that we've got our eye on everybody in the market, but between all the investors that we talk to and all the lenders and all the bankers now, we have a pretty good idea of what every investor is doing in Houston. And it's amazing to me some of the stories I hear through the grapevine. I did not, let me put it this way. I didn't know this industry was as crooked as it is. Let me put it that way. I told you all the stories. I mean, it's mind-boggling. And a lot of it, once you start doing a lot of lending and borrowing with other investors that are lending and borrowing, you start to hear all the stories about who's really doing what. I mean, you see some things on Facebook, and then you talk to the lenders that are really where the rubber meets the road, and there's kind of a big disconnect there. So
what's some examples of that? Because people listening, including myself, don't have any idea of what you're referring to with some of the
perfect example. There was a guy here in town, big real estate educator, charged tens of thousands of dollars for real estate education, and his specialty was in private lending. And little did we know that he had a project that he was borrowed some money on from a mutual investor that we know. And something happened, let me just put it that way. Something happened, and he ended up getting unsecured lines of credit based on that particular property. How he convinced real estate investors to do this, I don't know. But he was so overly leveraged just on this one asset, where essentially he was saying he was taking like a newbie private money lender, and he would tell the lender, oh, well, do you want to borrow against this property? I own it free and clear. And he never did this stuff at a title company, and a new lender doesn't know that. So there was no search to see what other liens were on it, how much leverage is on it, what it was worth, how much rehab. I mean, it was just no deal valuation. So he just goes and starts borrowing money almost as like personal lines of credit against this house, even though the loans were never tied to the property. And according to one lender I ran into, he said this guy should have filed for bankruptcy like 5 times over. And I would love to tell you that's a unique story, but it's not. So about 8 months ago, me and a buddy of mine, Brant, he's another investor here in town that we have a lot of respect for.
He's been on the show too.
Oh, Brant Phillips been on the show?
Yeah, I had him on the show. He's back probably about 15 episodes ago. Okay,
so Brant's fantastic, and we've been buds for years. In fact, I went to his flip school way back in the day. So he's one of those guys that taught me how to flip houses. But in any case, so Brant and I decided to put on this private lender summit because we kept seeing all these lenders just get absolutely screwed by investors. And we sat down and said, okay, well, we got 2 options here. One is I can run these folks out of town on social media, which is probably not conducive to my time. And then the second one was, well, how about we do this? Let's just teach lenders how to lend, and then that way these guys can't get any money. They can't steal. I mean, essentially it's fraud. They can't steal other people's money. So we started doing that. We started our first private lender summit back in, I think it was October 2015. And we only do it every quarter. So we do the meeting once a quarter, and we thought, hey, if we have 20 people show up to this thing, it'll be a big success. Well, we had 90 folks show up. And so now we average anywhere between like 150 and 200 people show up. And it's a good event. We teach lenders how to lend, and they ask a bunch of questions. And, what happens when something goes wrong? What if you got to foreclose? How do you evaluate a deal? For a lender's standpoint, there's two parts, evaluating the asset and evaluating the borrower. And we really go into what that looks like. So we're hoping that there's a lot less of this kind of fraudulent stuff that goes on in our market.
Yeah, let's talk about that, as far as what you just like a condensed, quick version, like a Cliff's Notes of what you coach them on, so that people listening, looking for private lenders can also coach and show that they know what they're talking about to any private lenders they're looking at using. Before I do that, Joe, I wanted to mention also, one of the benefits of working with private lenders that are already doing it also, in addition to what you said, in my opinion, is that you don't have somebody that might be a little bit nervous or might need to have the money or change their mind, 2 months down the road and say, I need my money back. And you have to refinance and get their money back out and all that kind of mess. And I think you deal with that a little bit less if you're using people that have been through the process.
I'll tell you the real horror story. There's 2 scenarios in which a private lender can really screw something up. One is it's the proverbial day before closing, day of closing. They get real nervous and go, I'm not lending on this deal. And then you're screwed because you got to find money in a matter of hours. And we've never had that happen to us, but I know that's one thing that can happen. Another one is where a private lender doesn't set aside the construction in escrow. So some borrowers want the construction money all up front, right? I think we've done enough business now. We just finished our 200th flip in 3 years. I've got to go out and video that at some point. But so we could get, let's say we're buying a house for $100,000. It's worth $250. It needs $50,000 in rehab. I know we could go to our lenders and say, hey, go ahead and fund that $50,000 on the HUD, and we get $50,000 at closing. But I don't know why I don't like doing it that way. I just much rather say, hey, hold on to that $50,000. We're going to go do the rehab, but then I'm going to ask you for a construction draw. And when it's done, then, wire that $50,000 over to our account. The other scary thing is that two things can happen from a borrower standpoint. They can back out at the last minute, or, and I've heard this happening a lot, they don't have that construction escrow just sitting in an account somewhere. And they'll end up doing another deal with it and essentially charging you interest on it. But then when you need it, they don't have it. So now you're like $50,000 into this deal, and there's a huge cash flow issue there. So from a borrower standpoint, that's one thing you got to be really, really worried about. And I can tell you that, there's one of the things I always like to say is, look, have you lent money to somebody else for real estate before? And if they say no, I'm really like, maybe you need to probably go do this with somebody else first. We don't do a lot of first-time borrowers. In fact, our wholesale deals, when we wholesale, we do not wholesale any properties to new investors. We want seasoned people who have at least done a couple of deals, because it makes the transaction so much easier. But I would ask the same thing if I were a lender to a borrower. Have you borrowed money on a real estate deal before? And if they said no, I'll just be perfectly honest with you, I don't think you ought to be doing the deal with them. There's a lot of hard money lenders out there. Hard money lenders see a lot of deals, and they know what they're doing. And typically a hard money lender will not let you screw a deal up. However, a private money lender doesn't have that same level of experience. So I have told we're now teaching. We've gotten into real estate. We're teaching a couple of folks, and it's been really exciting the last 2 weeks. We've got this mastermind group we've put together, and last night was our second meeting. We've already got somebody that's got one under contract for a really great deal. And
awesome.
One of the things I told them was, hey, they said, hey, would you mind introducing your private lenders to us? And I said, have you done a deal before? And he said, no. And I said, absolutely not. You're going to go use a hard money lender first. Because I want you to see what it takes, to put that whole deal together. Now, what you're going to do as a borrower in the future is you're going to put together a lender packet, and it's going to look very similar to what a hard money lender would ask for. And then you're going to present that to your private lender. So your lender can make an educated discussion or an educated decision on if they want to do that deal or not. So
right, huge point. Yeah, that's a huge point for new people that haven't done deals with private lenders before to use hard money or partner with somebody that's going to put up the money and split the profits. Get some experience, put together that package, and then working with private lenders and getting them to lend to you will be a lot easier because you've already proved that you can do it. And I don't want to forget about the condensed version of maybe what your seminar is for the private money seminar thing,
okay.
where you teach the lenders. Would you give us a quick rundown of what you're basically teaching?
Oh, yeah. So we'll have we'll talk about something. So one quarter we talked about how to estimate a rehab. Now, the way we estimate a rehab is walk a house, and this is what you can do in $5 per square foot increments. So for a lender, they don't need to know that rehab is $22,500.32. They need to know if that is either $20,000 or $25,000 or $30,000. That's all they really need to know. So we've taught them how to do that. We've taught them how to vet a borrower, especially their experience, maybe a little credit and criminal background check, look at some of their assets, look at some of their experience. And I'll give you a good example. So one thing that folks get all hung up here in Houston about, which I always find so funny, to be honest with you, but I understand where it comes from, is when someone says, well, I don't want to approach a lender or a hard money lender or whoever about lending on a deal because I don't have any experience in real estate. And you go, okay, well, what do you do for your day job? And they go, oh, well, I build $500 million rigs in the Gulf of Mexico. And then you go, well, since you're a project manager for $500 million projects, you can probably manage a $20,000 rehab on a $200,000 house. I mean, let's just be honest, right? So there's a lot of those translational skills. So we talk a little bit about what skill set is good for a borrower. I'm trying to think of some of the other events that we've done. Oh, so we'll talk about whatever the topic du jour is for that particular private lender summit. And then we have two sponsors. We have the Patent Law Firm, which is Texas American Title. It's our title company here in town. And they explain kind of the ins and outs of, doing a deal with private money and explain some of the documents. And then the second, the thing that we typically talk about is we'll have hold on one second here. I'm getting there we go. Sorry, I was getting another phone call came in. The second thing that we'll do is, so we'll have two vendors. We'll have Patent Law Firm and we'll have Quest IRA. And Quest will be there to say, hey, this is how you get your money to an IRA. This is how you get your money out of your IRA to do a real estate deal. Here's a prohibitive transaction. Here's this. And they kind of do a quick spiel. And then we'll do whatever our topic is, how to vet a borrower, how to vet an asset, how to do a rehab. And then we'll do a case study. And that case study will typically be a deal that Brant or I has done. And then we will bring up the lender to the front of the room that's done the deal with us and talk about the deal from the lender's point of view. One of the things I always find fascinating is there's all these case studies around town about private lending, but they never have the private lender give their side of the story. So we'll put a private lender in front of the room and then they'll discuss, how it was to do the deal and some of the deals they've done. And then if we've got time, we'll put a panel together of all the folks that have presented. The lender, Brant and I will be up there, and the title company, our sponsors, and we'll just get up there and folks will just ask us questions for 30, 45 minutes. So that's the typical format of these things. The networking is obviously where it's at. There's a lot of high quality networking, as you can imagine, in that kind of group. But that's how the events work.
All right, great. Yeah, that's pretty helpful to know. And how would you describe a good private lender? So if you're talking to several different lenders and you're trying to determine who's the guy that I want to borrow from, what would you say are the points you're looking for from them, regarding terms and maybe what their requirements are, appraisal surveys, et cetera? What kind of things are you looking for to determine which guys you want to borrow from?
This is going to be a shocker to a lot of people, but I don't look at what the money costs me. What the money costs me is not the number one factor of why I would borrow money from them. And I'll tell you why. Hard money, when you really get down to it, is not that expensive. I mean, it's expensive, but it's cheaper than a partnership, right? It's cheaper than going 50-50 with somebody. However, I will tell you this. If you have a private money lender, regardless of how cheap their money is, that is constantly blowing your phone up, is always on the job site, is literally like in your business 24/7, that is going to be much more costly than paying a couple of points and a percentage, and 12% or 14% interest from a hard money lender. So I really look at what are their expectations as a lender. Now, for us, if a lender wants to go out and look at the house before we buy it, they're more than welcome to do that. If they want to go out and check in on construction every once in a while, we tell them, hey, give us a call. We'll schedule it so you're not in the middle of a work zone. Most of the folks we deal with are at or near retirement, and they don't need to be walking around a construction site. So, but if it's somebody that's constantly blowing my phone up, I need weekly progress checks and all that, I'm like, I don't need your money that bad. I'll go to a hard money lender. So really, it's how they work is really important to me. And a lot of our lenders, they fall into one or two camps. One is they want to learn about real estate or they want to kind of see what we're doing. And then the other one is like, just put my money to work. I don't even want to talk to you. Just whenever you need more money, just give me a call. So, and most of the people we work with are really easy to work with. They want to go look at the house, and then they may want to pop in, let's say after we do a big construction draw. Although, to be quite honest with you, I get so busy around here in the office, I don't even ask for the construction draw until it's already listed on MLS. So a lot of times I send them like the MLS listing and say, well, obviously it's done. It's been done for like a week. And so I need the draw because, we've got 10 of you guys I've forgotten to get draws from, and, the checking account's looking pretty bare. But
Yeah, that'll happen with 10 rehabs.
yeah,
Well,
yeah. When you get a lot of them going on at once, I mean, you'll have $250,000, $500,000 out, and you're like, where'd all? You're sitting there in a meeting with all the whole sales team and the accounting team. You're like, hey, where's all the money at? They're like, did you ask for the draws on those? Oh, I guess I ought to do that. So, in any case, what I really look for is how do they work? What's their expectation? And then, and I have a table with all this, by the way. And then we have their cost of money, and really that's their terms. How many points and what percentage interest they want. And then that fourth column is how much money they have to lend. You know, if it's somebody that's got $150,000 and that's it, I mean, we may do one deal. I really like establishing those longer term relationships where I can put, you know, 5, 6, 7, $1 million at work all at one time. So we do this deal and we put them in the next one, and then we just then we roll their funds over from deal to deal. Because it's a lot easier to manage 5 or 6 lenders when you've got a robust business than it is to manage like 30 of them. So that's what we look at.
so what are those? What are the terms, just for people that don't have any frame of reference for what good terms are for private lenders, and then the amount of money that you would consider a good amount of money to have to be able to use them for several properties? Is there the basic terms that you would consider good for people that don't have a frame of reference?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I don't ever. I mean, I'll tell you what our terms are these days. But one of the things I tell lenders is they say, "Hey, what interest do you pay?" And I'll say, "I don't know. What do you want?" And they'll say, "Well, we want 20% interest plus like 10% of the back end." And I go, "Okay, well that's great." So one of the things that let me back up and let me tell you why this is important. One of the things that some lenders, especially new ones, believe is that you're their only financing option. So they really try these kind of confiscatory rates. They try and pass those things on to you. And the reality is like, look, man, I'm just trying to get this cheaper than hard money. I mean, that's really what you're trying to do. So I'd sit down and say, hey, look, I got hard money lenders that are 3 and 13 or 2 and 12, whatever the number is. So I'm just trying to get rates below that. I'm trying to get cheaper money. So if someone says, well, I want the most return I can, and I want 5 points and 15%, you go, hey, look, I can go to the hard money lender next door and he's 3 and 14. So what's an appropriate return for you? And then they'll give you whatever their number is. But this is what I'll tell them. I draw a chart up on a whiteboard and I say, look, I run a business, right? And they go, yeah. And I said, what am I trying to do in business? You're trying to make the most money you can. Absolutely. So your cost of money is a cost against making the most money I can. And I said, look, I've got some 0 points and 6% money. Actually, I have some 0 points and 5.25% money. I have some 0 points and 6%, 0 and 7, 0 and 8, all the way up to 1 point and 14%. Now, I'm a business guy. You're a business guy or gal. Typically, people have money, have some business sense, right? And I'll say, whose money do you think I'm going to use first? And they just look at me and they go, well, the cheapest one, you idiot. And I go, yeah, absolutely. And I go, okay, so this guy's got $300,000. And so I'll draw I'll mark right through the cheapest guy. I go, we'll use all his money first. And this gal right here, she's got $500,000, it's 0 and 8. And I'll use all her money. And then you start going up the list and they start looking at it and they go, oh, so I've got to be somewhere between, X and Y. And it's like, well, you can be wherever you want, but I'm telling you, I'm using all these people's money first. And I'll tell you, one of the secrets we learned in the private lending game is that if they have 80% utilization, meaning they're using their money 80% of the time, their money is out working 80% of the time, that's a really high watermark for them to hit. So if you've got somebody that's, let's say, 10%, right? Their money is 10, like they're 0 and 10%, okay? So in reality, how often does your money really work? If they're working it like a full-time job, their money is really only out 80% of the time. So what's their annual return? It's only 8%. So if you're somebody like us who can really churn the deal volume, you can get much lower rates because you're keeping their money to work much longer. With regards to other terms, we've got some folks that have money with us for 5 years. Like they just said, hey, we set up a little LLC. We call it our chocolate and vanilla option. we've got the vanilla option is we do one deal, we put your money in the deal, you got a first lien, and you've got some, there's a construction escrow there. We do the deal, we take the money out of the deal when it gets sold, and we buy another deal, the money goes back in. We've got one guy that came to us and said, look, I want to partner with you guys, but I only want to make like 8% return. We're like, okay. And then he says, I just want to check every month, and I don't want to hear from y'all. Because I like you guys, but I don't want to deal with all this like deal nonsense. Because we can I'll tell you what, when we start working with private lenders, they'll go, oh yeah, I want my money to work all the time, yeah. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to put your money to work, but it's going to be constant. I mean, it's like moving through. So it's going out of accounts, it's coming back in. We'll drive. Some lenders, particularly the older guys that are in their 80s and they're trying to they're trying to have the retirement life. They go, man, you're driving me nuts. I got one guy right now. He's like, you are driving me crazy. You're in and out of deals so fast. I said, well, that is a good thing, right? He goes, no, I understand that. So in any case, with one investor where we had this issue with, he said, look, you guys are great, but I don't want to talk to you all the time. I just want my money every month. I said, okay. So I called my attorney. I said, hey, how should we set this up? And he said, well, you could set up a little LLC. Everybody's a partner in the LLC, and then you've got a checking account, and everybody's got access to the checking account. And it's a pass-through. So our company pays this company, who then pays our lender, which is not really a lender, he's more of a partner, that pays his partner 8%. And it doesn't matter if that money is in a deal or sitting in that checking account, it pays 8% or 1/12 of 8% every single month. So that's how we set that up. We're starting to see lenders that we've got a longer relationship with, they want to start to go to that model. And what we tell them is, that money sits in that checking account, or there's a lien against the property in the name of that entity. So when it goes to closing, so the money's either a checking account or in a deal. And that's worked really well for a lot of lenders, because we do drive them crazy eventually with all the deals that we're doing.
Yeah, that's a great way to set it up. So let's get into finding these guys, and if you've got some tips on how to find the good private lenders, or even any private lenders to start working with, what would you say to people?
Go to networking events, and this is one of the things I think a lot of people miss when they go to networking events. They forget the root word, which is working. It's a networking event is working. You are working. I realize you have a beer or a glass of wine in your hand, but the reality is it's a working event. And if you've ever seen my business partner and I work a room, and it doesn't matter how big the room is, first we go to the bar, because that's most important, get an adult beverage, and then I'll start at one end of the room, and then he starts in the exact diagonal opposite. And then we start chatting with people, talk, and we meet in the middle, compare notes. And then we go to the other corners of the room, and then we go through the room. And really what we're doing is we're qualifying people just like we do leads that come into our business. And we sit down, or we walk through the room, we go, hey, what do you do? And they go, oh, I'm a real estate investor. And you're like, yeah, no kidding. Everybody's a real estate investor. So how many deals did you close last month? I mean, we get real, I don't want to say pushy, but once we get through the pleasantries of, hey, who are you? Great, you're nice. Oh, I like your hair. Okay, so what do you do? Oh, I'm a real estate guy. Okay, great. What do you do in real estate? I'm a landlord. Okay, well, how many houses do you have? Oh, I got 5. Well, how many did you close last month? Well, I haven't closed any in 2 years. Are you really a real estate investor? You're probably not. I mean, you are, because you like to show up to the events, but the likelihood of us doing a deal together is about 0. You'll eventually run into the guy or gal that says, I'm a flipper, and I'm a landlord, and I've been doing this 20 years. And you go, oh, okay, well, what do you do? Well, I've got a portfolio of 50 houses, and I flip, a house or 2 a month. And those are the guys that hey, I can wholesale deals to you. And you go, hey, you ever do any lending? And I guarantee you they do. If you're a successful real estate investor, after a while, you got plenty of money to go put into different stuff. So that's typically how that works. Or you'll run into you'll actually run into a lender, and you'll say, hey, what do you do? And they go, well, I'm a private lender. I mean, they'll just tell you, like, yeah, I'm a lender. I'm looking for people like you to sell my money to. You got to think a bank and a private lender are no different than like a used car dealership, right? Everyone puts these financiers on this pedestal, and I'm like, no, man, they're selling you money. I mean, it's no different than going to a car dealership. How many people love going to a car dealership? About 0, right? It's because they're selling you a car. Well, you know what? A lender's trying to sell you their money. So treat them just like you would a car salesman, right? So, when you're sitting down with a lender, then you can have that. And typically I don't have, if someone says, hey, I'm a lender and I'd love to, sell you some of my money, they don't say it like that, but I'd love to lend you some money. I just get their contact information and I move on to the next person. You just say, hey, we'll chat later. So that's how I would do it. And I just start going down the line, go into a room and just start having a lot of those conversations. How many deals do you do? Now someone may say, oh yeah, I'm a lender. Okay, great. How many deals did you do last month? 0. Well, how many did you do last year? 0. They're not really a lender. You really want to find those people that are active in real estate. And that's especially early on, because those folks, another thing to consider too is those people could be mentors for you someday.
Yeah.
So that's how we do it. We find most of ours through those sorts of events. I've had realtors approach us, or real estate agents who've been real estate agents for a million years, who've made really good money. Trying to think who else has approached us. But typically networking events are the best events. I've got buddies of mine here in Houston that hang out at like cigar bars, in the middle of like a cigar club, like in the middle of the day on a Tuesday or something. All those guys are pretty wealthy. If you're hanging around smoking, $5 and $6 cigars during the workday, you probably got some extra money you can put to work on stuff. So, really, it's just where do people who have got excess capital hang out? For us, we like to do it at networking events. Now, I'll tell you the other thing that's nice. If you've got this growing business and you started doing some deals, I highly recommend start pitching to people who put on these real estate events to do a case study for them. Because if you're the one that's standing there at the front of the room talking about a deal you did, that has huge social proof. It goes a long way in establishing credibility. So we do that at every little chance, we get, hey, I'd love to do a case study this week for such and such club or whatever. So that's kind of how I do it. And I'll tell you another thing too. One of the nice things about, working with hard money lenders, a lot of those hard money lenders work in, they've got a social media campaign set up. So if you partner with that hard money lender on the marketing side, in other words, you go to your hard money lender and say, hey, this is my first deal. I'm going to take a bunch of pictures of the before, and we're going to take pictures after, maybe during, and put it on your Facebook page, and I'll put it on my Facebook page, and we'll share it with everybody. I guarantee you there's other real estate investors that are watching that. And then when you have that discussion with that private money lender at a networking event, you go, oh yeah, Joe, did you see all the pictures we put up? I borrowed some money from Joe Blow Hard Money Lender, and we did this deal, and it worked out really well. So there's a way to leverage. It's not always just about the points and the interest. One of the things you and I were talking about earlier is my guys that are 1 in 14. It's a duo. They've been friends for like 50 years. And someone asked me the other day, was like, well, why do you keep sending deals to those guys? I said, because they've got enough money and enough wherewithal that when the market does crash, those are going to be the investors I can count on. So sometimes it's not all about your cost of money. I think a lot of folks race to reduce their expenses too fast in their business, and they really need to be focused on generating more revenue. And if you're generating more revenue, don't get me wrong, you want to keep your cost of capital as advantageous as you can, but on the flip side, you also want to keep those folks included. Remember, banks are your cheapest form of financing. Bar none, unless someone gives you the money, it's just about the cheapest. We've got some lines of credit that are LIBOR plus 1.25% or 1.5%, which comes out to like 5.25%, 5.5%. Anything below 7% is really free money when you get right down to it. So, but the problem is let's say, we'll be 3 years old this year, so we can start getting these larger bank lines, $3, $4, $5, $6, $7 million. Well, what happens when the market crashes? Those bank lines evaporate overnight. So you have to maintain a relationship with your private lenders. You're always going to have private lenders. So that's kind of the way we look at it. And really it's a future business or business continuity issue when the market changes.
Yeah, that's a great point. And something you had touched on, it's probably been about 5 minutes now, but you had talked about, whenever you met these people at these networking events and, you found out they were a private lender, and you say, hey, you get their contact information, say, we'll talk later. And I immediately thought of how, a lot of people that I talk to that are looking for private lenders, they don't know how to approach them. They feel like they've got to beg them to lend the money.
Mm-hmm.
And really, it's not that way. It's like what you're doing is providing a great, safe way for them to make a great return on their investment and put their money to work for them, instead of letting it sit in a checking account, not really earning anything. And so that's how you really look at it. And what you said just represents that. It's like, I don't need to sit here and kiss his butt and try to, wow him. It's like, we'll talk later, see if we can work something out. But you're not having to sell yourself so much, and you don't need to treat it like something where you've got to impress them and sell yourself too much.
No, we are so like anti-sales over here. Like even when we're buying houses, a lot of times we ask people, why aren't you calling a realtor? Like, why am I here to buy your damn house? I mean, you call a real estate agent. What am I doing here? And we do the same thing with money. One thing to keep in mind is that where else are they going to get the return? Like if y'all listen to my show on business radio, there's a show that comes out of Houston, and I know he's all over Texas. He might be nationally, but he's a money manager, and he's talking about how the next 10 years are going to be like the 70s, where you're getting like 4 and 5% rates of return in the capital markets, in the stock market, where all the risk is, a 4 or 5% return. So when you're talking to these people and you can get an 8% return to them on a house that could be, I mean, we're using this in a fictitious fashion, but literally you could be buying their neighbor's house, right, to fix up and sell or fix up and rent, and they could be making an 8% return on that. What's the risk in that? I mean, is there risk? Sure. But is it as much risk as on the stock market? I don't think so.
Right.
So, and I can tell you right now, there are way more people that have got money that have deals. Way more. It's not even close. And I can tell you, since some of the turmoil has happened in the market starting last year, I mean, they are investors that are just throwing money into real estate deals. I'll give you a good example. You can call Quest IRA today, and they don't publish this publicly, but they talk about it in some of our events. And they have $180 million in cash. They're a self-directed IRA custodian. So it's not their cash, it's their IRA account holders' cash, right? Like I have an account over there. Actually, I have 2 accounts over there, and it's my cash that's sitting over there. They have $180 million. 180. And I can tell you $180 million, it sounds like a lot, but it's not a lot of money. But $180 million just sitting there, earning a goose egg. So I mean, what?
Right.
There are not enough if somebody handed me $180 million today, I couldn't use it. And my burn rate right now is $3 to $5 million. So it's like, I couldn't even use it all. Brant couldn't use it all. I mean, shoot, Brant and I have been talking about a fund forever. I mean, then you start thinking about a fund, $25 million fund. They have $180 million over there. I mean, there's so much money out there. I wouldn't even see. I'll tell you where it is. That's a scarcity mentality, right? Like, it's just the same way with sellers. Like, I got to kiss their butt to buy their house. No, you don't, because you know who the customer is in a relationship. It's the person who's handing over the money, right? I'm the customer when I'm buying a house. And I think a lot of people get that mixed up in their psychology. They're like, oh, well, they're the customer because they're selling me the house. No, they're not, because you're taking on the problem, right? You're the customer. You got to sell me on why I should buy your house. Same thing with a real estate investor that wants to lend on a deal. You've got to sell me why I should use your money, because you might be a pain to deal with, and I don't want to deal with you. Your rates might be nuts. I mean, they need to sell you on that. And if there's only like 1 or 2 people you're talking to about doing lending, you need to go talk to some more people. Again, to go back to networking, the root word is working. You need to be working those events like a full-time job. That's how you'll pick up private lenders.
Great. Do you know of any, if people are sending mail or anything to anybody to talk about possibly lending on deals, if there's any FTC things to watch out for? Are you aware of any of that?
I have no idea. We don't do that. I think it's, you could, I don't know, you probably could run afoul of some issues.
I think it's like talking about specific numbers, and then, as far as reaching out to people with specifics on deals and stuff like that is a no-no. And then if they haven't requested information, I think there's some issues with that. But I've got a guide I'll have on the show notes page of people that have, I think, a little bit more information about that. But definitely be careful.
Facebook, and they post like, I need $100,000 loan and 12% and this and that. And I'm like, who the hell is going to loan? These things are, one of the things you always hear is private lending is relationship based. And it totally is. So while you're spending time and money on stuff like that, you could just be going to networking events. Most of the networking events are free. It might cost you a bar tab. And trust me, that's so much more worth your time. Because not only are you networking for private lenders, you're networking with wholesalers, people can bring you deals. You're networking with other investors that you could sell deals to. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that happens in that networking event. And I think if you're doing that stuff, it doesn't really work. Although I've never tried it, so maybe it does work, but I just never thought it would work real well.
Right. Yeah, and you got to watch out for what you say. I think it's mainly just kind of like reaching out and saying, this is what I do, and let's meet and talk about it. And then it's not something where you've got documented letters and stuff going out to them trying to request funds.
I'll tell you what I could see doing. I could see partnering with somebody like Quest or partnering with like a RIA and developing a mailing list for an educational event at that RIA or with Quest or somebody like that, where you say, hey, I'm a real estate investor. I'm going to be a guest speaker at this event for private lenders. Would love to see you out there at the event. I think that makes a lot more sense, and not from a trying to get around any sort of legal issues, but inviting them out in a very non-salesy way.
Right.
To come out to an event where they can meet everybody and you can establish a relationship and that sort of thing. I think that makes a lot more sense than saying, oh, it looks like you're a private money lender. Hey, would you like to lend me, money on a deal? That sort of thing.
All right. And I think I said FTC. I don't know if that's SEC actually is what I mean.
Should be SEC, huh?
Right. FTC. But anyway, yeah, check out. Well, it is SEC, isn't it?
Yeah.
But so be careful of that if you do decide to do those kind of things. Anybody listening. And then, as far as, working with investors, I guess that, the thing that some people have asked about is, either they've got other people interested in lending for their deals. Can they use multiple investors for a single deal because they, the lenders that they have don't have a whole lot of money, maybe $20,000, $5,000, $10,000. And, how do you feel about that?
Well, here's how we do it. In fact, I didn't even know what was going on until I reviewed one of our lender docs. And one of the lenders we work with a lot, he's one of the guys I've worked with since the very beginning. And I sent him an email, and usually he takes everything I'll email him. He sends me an email back and he says, let me get back to you tomorrow about this one. I said, okay. So I get the note back, at least we sent it to a real estate attorney. He draws all the docs up, and so I'm looking at the note, and there's got to be like 8 accounts on this note. And it's like his IRA, his wife's, like his next door neighbor's HSA. I mean, it's like all this stuff that he pulled together to go do this deal. And so my understanding is that as investors, as the borrower, we can't go and get all these people together and put them together. Now, if one of our lenders goes out and pulls a couple of their buddies and then they lend through that LLC, that's fine. But for us, it's not something we want to get into. So I now have our lenders that do it with us all the time. Like one guy will do a deal with us, and then I won't know until I get the note because I just they're like my one contact, right? So let's say I'm working with Bob. So Bob and I do a deal, and Bob's got like, I don't know, $200,000. We put 120 into a deal, and so he's got another 80 grand. And so I may send Bob an email and say, hey man, I think you only got like 80 G's left, but here's one that's like 150. He'll go, I'll let you know tomorrow. I'll be right back. So then he goes and gets a couple of his buddies at the office, that have got $20,000 in a Quest IRA account, and then this guy's wife's got 20 grand sitting in an account, and they'll pull it all together, and they'll work with our attorney, which technically represents them. I mean, to be honest, I don't even know it until I get this So I look at the note and I'm like, oh, there's Bob. There's Bob's IRA. There's his wife's IRA. There's his next door neighbor or his drinking buddy. And here's a guy he plays on the bowling league with. I mean, they'll do it all on their own. So I don't do any of that. If they want to do it, I don't care. A lot of times when they've done one or two deals, they'll put their little LLC together and then put all their accounts in through that LLC. So they're the ones that are pulling all their stuff together. I don't deal with anybody.
Yeah, it's too much of a hassle.
Yeah, I don't. And I think there's some legal issues associated with that. But like I said, I mean, it's them that are doing it. So
yeah, so recommended one lender per deal, basically.
Yeah, it's one lender per deal, first lien position. So even though they've pulled those funds together, that entity is the one that owns that first lien position.
Right. So it's something to be aware of. Well, I think we've pretty much covered all of the things that I wanted to talk about. This is a great episode on, what exactly a private lender is, how to find them, how to determine whether they're somebody you would want to borrow from for your deals, and all that kind of good stuff. I really appreciate you sharing all this with us.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Go raise a bunch of money. Buy a bunch of houses, guys.
All right. Well, and be sure to listen to his radio show. It's an awesome show. What was the station and time on that?
1110 KTEK, business radio, and that's at 9 a.m. in the morning. So, did you get the podcast from the show we did?
No, I never got it.
Oh, let me email you the podcast link and then you can download.
Yeah, send it to me and I'll put it on the show notes page here for this too, which is flippingjunkie.com/35. flippingjunkie.com/35. You can listen to our radio show together, me and Jason, and also I'll have that private lender guide for finding and talking to private lenders that you can download also on the show notes page, flippingjunkie.com/35. Thanks again, Jason. Have a great week.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks again for listening to the Flipping Junkie Podcast. That was a great episode with Jason Bible about private lenders. And you can go to the show notes page at flippingjunkie.com/35 to download that Finding and Working with Private Lenders guide that I'll have on there for free. And then also a link to the radio show that I did with Jason about a week and a half ago. But actually, it'll be 2 weeks now when this comes out. But thanks again for listening to the show. Next week, I will have, I'm sure we'll be talking either about partnering with people or hard money lenders and how to get some funding that way, which is a great way to start either of those options when you're just starting out and don't have a track record yet. It's great to build up that track record and then move into working with private lenders. So have a great week. And of course, be sure to check out our real estate investor websites at leadpropeller.com. It'll give you the ability to take advantage of all the things that we're doing to stay on top of what works best for generating tons of motivated seller leads online. And also our CRM system, keep track of all your leads and deals and fortunes in the follow-up. And that's what that mostly allows you to do, and keep track of everything, work with the team. You can check that out at reimobile.com. Have a great week and see you next week.